My partner has been through a lot. We had been dating for 2 years and planning a life together when she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time she was in school for a dual graduate degree program and managed to finish it. Treatment was rough on her and she struggled a lot through it, and hasn't done well mentally dealing with the unfairness of it all. How different her body is after surgeries, and the fear of it coming back. All perfectly understandable, and I've been as supportive as I can throughout it all. Now all that said, she went into the graduate programs after we started dating, and one of the degrees was at a very expensive school for something that was only related and not required for the work she planned on doing, which would never pay very well. I questioned her about it gently at the time, but she was adamant about getting the expensive degree. It was her life. And we agreed it would be fine, because we could utilize public service loan forgiveness to pay off her debt that would total $100K. This was before cancer. I earn a considerable amount more than her. When we started dating I made 4x, and even with her degrees I make 3x what she does. I've always been happy to spend money on her. And after having moved in together over a year ago and proposing shortly after, I really went into the mindset of it being our money. When we moved in she was finishing her degrees and I covered 100% of our bills, including some tuition costs for an extra semester since she was slightly delayed by her treatment. This was totally fine because school was her job and she'd be able to contribute when she graduated, and even though I make much more, if we are both working full-time jobs it felt fair. Now that she has graduated and started working, she is miserable at her job mostly because she is incredibly anxious that she isn't doing it well, and doesn't feel like her school prepared her. She was already prone towards anxiety and depression, she takes medicine for it. But mentally she is in a very bad spot because of all this. On top of that she feels like she doesn't doing enough for her health, mostly exercise, to keep her healthy to reduce the cancer from coming back, but she says she is too tired after work to do much else than occasionally go on a walk. Recently she got the idea in her head to start working half weeks to give her more time to exercise and stress her out about work less. She says not knowing for sure how long she'll live has changed her priorities about working. Before all this she was a pretty driven type of personality, working multiple jobs. But working part-time doesn't meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness. We've talked about it extensively and she feels it is important for her to work part-time. But I am not very comfortable with the idea for many reasons. I get where she is coming from in her needs, but feel like she is looking for a quick fix to her problems. That puts us in a pretty big hole financially because she is so miserable instead of fully dealing with her problems. I'd be more okay with it if it was short-term while she sorted through some things, but she says she just wants more time to exercise and be stress-free, so she doesn't know when that would end. I just feel like she is taking our relationship, which is already unbalanced, and asking to make it a lot more so, and solely because she is in a position to do so because of my job. We can financially afford it, but I haven't been able to come to terms about the disproportionality it would create in our relationship. P.S. My longtime partner wants to start working half-time to relieve her work stress and give her more time to take care of her health, but it makes me uncomfortable because she has $100,000 of debt and it would make our relationship very unbalanced. My husband and I don't want kids. My mother-in-law is big into family in the traditional sense. She has been pushy with us about having kids since we got married. Literally the week after we got engaged, she started asking. My husband has always changed the subject, and has even told her that it's really none of her business. Every time we see her, she asks. Everything we do is built around the idea of us having kids. 3 years into our marriage, my husband said we might not even have kids, and mother-in-law would not hear it. At year 4, husband had a vasectomy and I had a tubal. So this weekend we were all at their home enjoying some barbecue and drinks and everything. When I get up to grab a beer, my mother-in-law asks me if maybe I should drink water instead, because wink wink nudge nudge. You never know. I was annoyed by this and said, there's really no chance. MIL, all wide grin, said, oh come on. It's time for you two to finally get serious. Put down the beer and tell us when we can finally expect you two to finally make your family official. I said we've been official for about 5 years now, MIL, and drink the beer. Husband laughs with me. Mother-in-law gets more annoyed and says, you won't be real, last names, until you bless us with babies. Husband repeated. After about 15 minutes of the usual comments, I finally snapped and said, husband got snipped. I had my tubes tied. We're not having kids. You need to stop bringing it up. Period. Well, I thought I started WWII. She started crying and stormed off. Family looked at us with disgust and stormed off to comfort her. We left. Party kinda ended. The social media bullshit started shortly after. Vague posts, links about how motherhood is a woman's greatest calling, listicles about how unhappy childless women are, etc. Some meme about how I guess I wasn't a good enough mother and won't be graduating to grandmother. It's obnoxious to the point that I just muted all of them. My mother-in-law finally called me this morning and told me that she was willing to put this all behind us if husband and I came over, and listened to her reasons that we really need to have kids. I told her no, that we are tired of her pushing this on us, and then she said, you two aren't prepared to be real, last name S. I'd like a refund for what we paid for the wedding. It wasn't that much. It was like $400 for the rehearsal dinner. I hung up on her. When recounting this to my friends, a few of them said that I was the asshole here for dropping it like that. But I don't think she was ever going to drop it if I didn't finally make a serious, direct comment about it. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down, but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her, don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her, and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi, and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess, and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, we like this place and have no solid plan. I freaked out and was like, you guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister. Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. My fiancé, James, and I have been together for 3 years, planning a wedding for October 2016. A few months before we met, James brought a brand new home in a newer subdivision. We recently refinanced it and added my name. Before me, James dated a woman, Britt, for about 7 months. She's never been to this current house. From what he's told me, they broke up when he decided they weren't as compatible. The breakup was rough. to the point where he and neighbors called the police when she wouldn't leave his front yard and was screaming at 10 p.m. at night. This is all from what he and his sister have told me. I don't have a reason to not believe them. I've only had a few run-ins with Britt. These have been at restaurants or just coincidences out in public. We never spoke up until now. The problem, Britt has bought a house in the same subdivision that we live in. We even share a cul-de-sac. The only reason we found out about this is from a flyer we got welcoming her to the neighborhood. Our subdivision is very community-oriented. James insists he's never told her where he lives and hasn't spoken to her since the night he called the police. We both brushed it off as a coincidence, but lately it's becoming very weird. Here's why. I work for a company that allows me to work from home 3 out of the 5 days. Our home is a ranch and my office window faces the street. I'm not sure what Britt does for a living, but she does not work during the day. From about noon until 3, she spends her time walking up and down our street. When she passes our house, she doesn't take her eyes off of it. It's almost like she can see me in the office. She'll even stop in front of our house and stretch there for about 5 minutes. Every day anyone is at home. It makes me uncomfortable to the point where I have all of our blinds closed during the day. I understand the need for exercise, but she walks for 3 hours just going up and down our street. Another issue is when either James or I are outside with the dog, she'll let her dog outside and it will come sprinting to our yard. This causes her to come and get her dog. Every time she says, "I'm sorry, we're still working on training." James and I are always polite. Normally, I would be okay with this, but James has pointed out that any other time she lets her dog out and we're not outside, she'll immediately correct him before he runs off. She never corrects him when we're outside. We've been getting ding-dong ditched a lot since she's moved in. Something that's never happened in the 4 years that James owned the house. The doorbell will ring around dinner time, between 6 and 8, and by the time anyone gets to the door, no one will be there. It's gotten to the point where our Doberman has picked up the routine and waits by the front door, pacing. The last issue, which I believe might be illegal, is that our mail seems to go missing for a while and then pop back up. What I mean is, Britt will knock on our door and say that she received our mail and is just returning it. This has never happened with the previous owners in her house. We don't have a new mail carrier either. It seems to happen once a week and she'll always bring it on a Friday night. Based on the date on the envelopes, we can tell she's been holding it all week. This has pushed James over the edge because she had our water bill, which resulted in us being 2 days late on the payment. James is neurotic when it comes to paying bills. Every time I have to convince him not to go over and yell at her because we haven't actually caught her taking it out of our mailbox as much as I try to monitor it. She usually gets 2 days worth of mail because those are the days I'm not working from home. The other days I get it right away. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I don't want to piss her off by confronting her, but how can I get her to stop? She's making us nervous and I feel uncomfortable in my own yard most of the time because I know she is watching. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not sure if I can legally do anything about it. I don't have anything against her, it's just becoming an annoyance.